this is the stage towards this direction. Everyone was just like that.
Watching Eclectic Arts Media.
You know, just see what we can come up with together. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really great as well.
I make jokes about how I have to watch it because I sound like a cult recruiter if I'm talking about the ranch.
Ciao, sono Ginger Costa Jackson e io sono qui con Eclectic Arts Media.
Hi, friends.
Hi,
Josh.
Hello, everyone. We are there.
I'm a one-man band right now, so it's like I see everything that needs to be done, and I'm like, oh, I've got to go in and do all of that too, you know?
And I was like, why am I asking myself that? I like it. So what the hell?
Hey everyone, this is Todd Latourie from Queensryche, and you're watching Eclectic Arts Media.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media, based here in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday, the 7th of February, 2024. I thank you for your patience. We had some technical difficulties, but everything has been sorted out, keeping my fingers crossed. So we'll be getting started really soon. I would like to thank Britta Gortz from Hi-Rez for joining me yesterday. It's always a pleasure having Britta on, and their second album, Dormant, just dropped about 10 days ago. So Britta was kind enough to join me yesterday. And I'd also like to thank my good buddy Ken for spreading the word about this particular interview, and also Eddie, the head fan club on Facebook. Thank you guys for also sharing this information about this particular interview. And so if this is the first time you're joining me on my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. And if you're over on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there. So since we always are live when I do my interviews, if you would like to ask the guest a question or a comment, please join either through YouTube or Twitch, and you should have instant access to the chat. Please be aware that as the conversation is going, I will try to fold in your questions as we go along. But obviously, if my guest is in the middle of a thought, I'm not going to just interrupt them and throw a question in there, but I will get to what you have to say. And again, thank you very much for your patience. It was not anything other than good old technology doing its thing when it doesn't want to cooperate with us, but everything should be good now. Okay, my guest today is an artist of legendary stature. Over many decades in the music industry, he has thrilled and entertained fans all over the world. From his days with Iron Maiden, Praying Mantis, and of course, Lionheart, he continues to write, record, and perform music for the masses. His band Lionheart has a new album coming out on February 23rd on Metalville called The Grace of a Dragonfly. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the Eclectic Arts Media virtual studio, Mr. Dennis Stratton. Hi, Dennis.
How you doing? I'm there. Thank you.
I'm doing really well. How are you?
That was a great trailer. That was a brilliant trailer I just watched. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It was so fun looking through all the different things of your career and trying to find things that kind of told the story within about a minute.
Brilliant.
Awesome. So I absolutely want to dive right into the new Lionheart album. And I've been listening to the songs a lot, so there's certain specific questions I have about the songs. But in terms of the Grace of a Dragonfly, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Steve kind of is the one who kind of captains the ship, and you guys kind of work on your parts, and then he kind of puts it all together. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, exactly. We found this way of working with the Reality of Miracles because we were locked down in COVID. We'd got halfway through the album. Steve was touring with Michael Schenker. I was in Europe. Rocky was working. Clive was away. Lee was away with Sweet touring. There was no way of getting the album finished. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, came COVID, and we were locked down. So it meant that we were all home alone with families, and with no work, no touring, no playing, no gigs. So it was handy to be able to have that free time to finish the album off. So once we found this routine of working worked really well, yes, we cracked on with the new album, and we did it exactly the same. We did it exactly the same way of working. Yeah.
Okay, so help me out with the songs for the new album. Were these songs that, did you write a song on the album, or a couple songs, or did Steve write the material and hand it to the guys in the band as they kind of do your parts on it? How does that kind of work for the songwriting part?
Well, it was in the early stages. We had Lee Small writing these lyrics, a couple of songs that we'd put down with Steve putting them down, and Lee started writing these lyrics about the Second World War, and so then we had to decide what the album was going to be. So how we were going to go forward, and it was Steve mentioned about a concept album. Again, we have to be very careful because we're not elaborating war. We're not highlighting that war's good. It's totally opposite. It's against war. We want no war, and we had to be very careful with other countries that we work in, like Europe and Japan and places like that. And you don't want to upset anyone. So basically, the idea of the album was to celebrate the lives of the ladies, the boys and girls, the ladies and gentlemen that served in the war, in the services, that sacrificed their lives in the war. They sacrificed their lives so that we would have a more peaceful life. We would be able to live freely. So that was the idea at the first hurdle, which was, let's get the concept album correct. It's not about war, it's against war. It's a peace album. So that's how the lyrics started coming in. So basically, whatever songs, whatever backing tracks that Steve came up with, which Rocky came up with, or Lee, or myself, it went straight to Steve, then it went straight to Lee, and Lee would then work on the lyrics. Like one of the songs was Little Ships, which I just had this tune in my head. I put it down on the laptop on Cubase, and I sent it to Steve, and he then took the song a little bit further. And then Lee called me and then said, "Look, I'm going to call this Little Ships." I never had a clue what he was going to call the song. So basically, Lee was calling all the shots regarding the lyrics, and the song started to flow. So that's how the album started. But we had to get the point clear, the fact that we weren't publicizing that war was a good thing. We were the complete opposite. It's about peace.
Okay, so with all of that you just mentioned, how far back do we go on the timeline when you started exchanging these ideas for this album? Was this like a year ago, a few months ago?
Yeah, it probably was. We decided to do another album after The Reality of Miracles, because the way we worked, it seemed to work for everyone, because you got to understand and remember one thing about Lionheart, that it doesn't generate an income, and we all have to live and survive. We all have other projects that we work on. Lee with Sweet, as I say, Michael Schenker and Steve, Rocky, Clive. we all have to work. I do a lot of work abroad, lots of tours. So basically, the idea is to do it, to try and do it in the spare time where people are not busy, not working, not touring. So it always takes a little bit longer to record an album when you've got other projects you've got to concentrate on. And you can't expect Steve to be in the studio if he's got to go out on tour with Michael Schenker, because he needs to earn a living as well. That was the main problem we had. It always takes time. But when you're at home for a few weeks, you can get so much done. And that's the way we work. Lee was coming up with some fantastic lyrics. Steve was coming up with some fantastic songs. Rocky was coming up with songs. I was coming up with some ideas, as I say, with little ships and sending them off. So that's exactly what you said earlier. Steve pieces everything together in a jigsaw puzzle and then starts putting all the files together. Yeah.
Okay, so that's there's a lot of moving parts there, a lot of schedules to deal with.
A lot of hours as well that Steve has to sit there and listen to everything.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of pieces. So it's always kind of amazing to me with a band, or I also interview and review films and television shows of how anything actually ends up getting created because there's so many things going on to get you to that final product. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, one song in particular for me, is The Eagle's Nest. That song has so much beautiful melodies in it. And I don't know if there's anything you can tell me particularly about that tune, because that's just melody all the way through it. And I just love it.
The funny thing is, Mark, about these songs is that this is where we should have Steve or Lee doing the interview with me, because they have more knowledge about the construction and the structure of the songs. If I'm not involved with the actual writing, I can't tell you much about the ideas. All I can say is that when I get the song and I'm going to add my parts, the song is basically halfway through the finishing of the song. So it's hard for me to express the thoughts of what went into the writing. Again, it's all part of, regarding the titles of the songs are all leaning towards the Second World War. There is one thing about The Eagle's Nest that you picked on, which I talked about just now, is the fact that on Reality of Miracles, when I heard the song Reality of Miracles, that one song, and we recorded it for the charity, for the children, and we did the video, to me, the first thing I heard in the Reality of Miracles, it's not a Lionheart song. It didn't seem to, sorry about my phone, it's messages. It didn't seem to fit in with the normal run of the songs that Lionheart are used to recording and playing. But it was different. It was commercial. It was as if some other band had recorded it. It was fantastic, and I loved it. And when I hear it back, I still feel that way now. It's the same thing with Eagle's Nest. You've got all these up-tempo songs, different time changes. You got this, you got that. All of a sudden, Eagle's Nest comes along, and it's like a pop song, like something like a commercial, or so commercial it could be another band, pop band on the radio. And so, to me, I always think that's changing the direction of the band. But I think it's for a good thing. It's a good point to change, so we a bit of versatility, versatile towards don't get the same sort of sound all the time and the same sort of songs. So if you change it, it gives a bigger aspect about how the band work. And that song, I can't tell you how Lee come up with the idea of The Eagle's Nest and the lyrics and what Steve with a chord structure, because I wasn't involved with recording it, with writing it. But I understand what you're saying about it's so different from a normal Lionheart song, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, and I understand what you're saying, that you didn't have involvement with the writing of it. But let's take that song as an example. When you're recording your guitar parts, are you just kind of going through and saying, this is where I think the guitar should be, or listening to the demo and just kind of replicating it? Is it pretty quick for you to kind of record your stuff on a song like that?
No, because we're doing it at home. There's no rush. Everything is done with ease. There's no time structure. You're able to put down little bits if they don't work. You know, send it, play it to Steve. It might need changing, but I normally follow what if there's some stuff on there that's already there on the song. Then don't if it's not broke, don't fix it. You just add your parts, and that's the way we work. You know, sometimes there'll be a harmony part on guitars that probably a bit technical, fast, and I will say to Steve, look, it's best if you do both parts because you've already played the first part. The timing needs to be spot on. So it might be better that you play the harmony to yourself because you already know the part. You already done it. It's already on the song. For me to record it, it might take a lot longer getting the timing exactly right. So sometimes there's no jealousy or there's no sort of like ego with this band. If it's quicker for Steve to do that harmony himself, so be it. And that's the way it works. So you don't want to overplay anything. I basically, when the song's nearly finished, Steve will send me 2 or 3 or 4 songs in a row. I load onto the laptop, onto Cubase, and I'll listen to it, and there'll be a 30-second or a 45-second gap. And Steve will say, look, stick one of your solos there and I'll work around it. So that's what I do. I get the track. I'm able to sit at home, relaxed, take me time, and I always try and play solos to complement the song. I don't want to overplay, and I don't want the solo to sound disjointed, different way of style of playing. You like it to complement how the song's going and not disturb it. And that's the way I am, you know. I think a lot of it is just simplicity, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I play guitar as well, so with your solos and how you approach it, I love the fact that your solos, one, they sound like you to me, 2, but you're making sure that it fits the song.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, you know, guitarists' egos kind of get in the way, and they're just kind of doing what they want to do over something. So this doesn't fit. It's so jarring sometimes when a solo comes up. And it's like, what were you thinking? And what was the other people in the band thinking when you do that?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So if you're, laying down a solo, and you said, like you're saying, you want to make sure you're playing for the song and you're not doing too much or too little. You've been playing guitar for decades. What kind of inspiration are you drawing from, besides listening to the music, of course, when you're coming up with your solo pieces?
Well, I don't really follow many guitarists, but from the early age, when I was 16, when I didn't even have a guitar, I used to watch a guy in East London, in Canning Town, at the Bridge House, called Terry Newman, and he used to play with a band in the Bridge House called Power Pack, and I used to watch him every night. I wasn't allowed in the pub, but I sneaked in, and I used to watch him play, and I'd walk home thinking about what I just saw and pick the guitar up at home, and I finally bought one at 16, played it. And there was another guy, a fantastic guitarist called Jeff Whitehorn, who now is guitarist with Procol Harum, but many years ago he did the circuit of the pubs, and I'd follow him about. And over the last, I'd say from the late 70s, early 80s, my biggest influence has always been Steve Lukather. I've never hidden the fact that the guy is just the ultimate. He plays any style, any kind of sort of music, from jazz to, from any artist, from Barbra Streisand to Michael Jackson to Lionel Richie, to anyone, and then he can get up and jam with Van Halen in the years gone, and Steve Vai and Satriani. He can hold his own. It doesn't matter. His style is across the board, and I love his playing. How he contributes to solo towards some of the Chicago stuff, some of the film scores he's done, just fit that film, that vocal from Celine Dion or from whoever. The solo he puts to it just melts your heart. It's just fantastic. So he's always been a big influence on me. Gary Moore and all the other guys, from the UK, love their playing.
I'm glad you mentioned Steve Lukather. I mean, have you had a chance to see him play live then?
No, I've seen him play with Toto. I've never actually met him. It was always my dream to meet him. He came over here many years ago to do some gigs with Paul Rodgers, and I went to the hotel to meet him, and he wasn't there. When we were recording the Lionheart album in LA, in Sound City Studios in 1980, I went out to grab something to eat, and Steve Lukather phoned the studio to talk to me because the girls behind the desk said he was recording at Sunset Sound, and we were in Sound City, and they knew how much I followed his playing. And when I got back, there was this little piece of paper said, and all it said on it was telephone message, Steve Lukather called for you, you were out. and I kind of cried. And so I've never actually met him, but still follow him all the time, yeah.
Oh man, that's unfortunate timing.
Yeah, it's my life. It's been my life all my life. Wrong timing. Lucky I'm not a drummer.
Oh man, and I mean, like you mentioned, Gary Moore, and it's been 13 years yesterday that we lost Gary. It's crazy. It's been that long.
Saw it on Facebook. All the photos. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, he was one of my top probably 3 guitar influences when I was learning was Gary's stuff.
I knew him very well when we first put Lionheart together at the Marquee and in the early 80s. And he used to come down. We used to drink all the time together at the Ship. And he always, can I get up and play with Lionheart? I went, no, you can't. You're not making me look stupid, you know. And yeah, many a time I've said to him, one day we were in a bar at a club up in London, and I said, yeah, well, I said, I can imagine if you was to put the guitar down for 5 years and never touched it, you'd come back and still be as good as you are. I said, because you're just natural. And yeah, we got on really well.
Wow, that I love hearing that. That's amazing. I never even got the chance to see him live over here in the States, and yeah, I actually worked my way backwards. I started with his solo stuff, and then I worked my way back into Thin Lizzy and some of the other bands that he was a part of. But the fact that you were at a pub, hanging out, drinking, having a beer, talking with him, holy moly, that's special. And as we kind of move along with Lionheart's album, since like you said, you guys kind of do this when you have time with your busy schedules, trying to find time to get the album together. It's coming out later this month in February. There's already a couple of videos out for some of the songs on YouTube and online. Is there anything else that we're going to be seeing, like another video once the album actually drops? Or anything?
Funny enough, is the song I spoke about, Little Ships, which I put together. There's a guy in Saffron Walden where we are now in the studio here at Ferrycroft. A good friend of mine, Stacey Dunn, who lives here. He's did many years at Music Technology University, and he records all my guitars, all my solos for Lionheart and other sessions that we do for different bands. He also records all my vocals. He's never done a video for Lionheart, and he loves doing videos. He's a solo artist. And so I said to him, how do you fancy doing a 30-second little clip for the next single, Little Ships, that's coming out in February? And so a few weeks ago, he did a 30-second clip, and I showed it to the band. They loved it. And I said, do you want to try? And today, about 3 hours ago, while I was in town walking around waiting to talk to you, they sent me the video, and we've just seen it on the phone, Little Ships, and it is fantastic. So that will be coming out in the next week or so.
Awesome. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Cool. When was the last time Lionheart performed live?
I would have thought Sweden Rock.
Okay.
So we played Rockingham 2016, I think it was, before we did Second Nature. It was only because we got together. We'd always kept in contact, although doing different projects. Rockingham was a festival they wanted us to play. We decided to give it a go. It was great coming here to Fairy Cross Studios and playing live together. We flew Steve over from Germany for the last 2 days. We rehearsed it. We went to Rockingham in Nottingham. We did the festival. It was brilliant, and we missed it so much. And when we went back to the dressing room, we had some great journalists come in from, you know, Dave Ling and Rob Evans, and loads of people came in and said, you can't stop now. You've got to do another album. So basically, we had the songs. We just had to write a few new songs. So we went and recorded Second Nature. Took a little bit of time, as I say, because Steve's away with Michael Schenker and different people working. But once Second Nature come out, it put the band back on the map. What happened after that was the fact that we decided to do the Reality of Miracles. And that took a little bit longer. And as I say, until COVID, which was enabling us to finish the album. So we then, in 2018, before Reality of Miracles, we went to Japan with Prayer Mantis. That was brilliant because lots of old friends in Japan from the early days, with 15 years with Prayer Mantis. A lot of fans there. And I was able to play with both bands because I got up with Mantis to do 3 songs from when we were together. With phone. And so after the Prayer Mantis tour, we played Sweden Rock, and then everyone was busy again. COVID came, Reality of Miracles came, so now we're back up and working after lockdown. We're back. All the gigs are coming back now. Festivals are coming back. People are not scared to go out now, so which is a good sign. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this year because I think we were saying earlier, me and Steve did an interview together, and I was talking to him on the Zoom, and it looks like we may have a lot more free time this year. We may have a lot more time this year to do more shows, but we won't know until, you know, the album comes out. Bruce Dickens made a big point years ago when he made a big comment, and he said, if you don't buy the band's albums, the bands can't tour. And he was dead right, 100% right. So if you're going to stream the albums, how do the fans expect us to find the money to tour? So help us. If you buy the album, buy the original copy with all the artwork, all the inside cover and the lyrics and the photographs and the booklets. Thank God Tristan Gretche's great designs, illustrations, fantastic. Buy the album, then we can hire a van and then we can tour. It's a vicious circle. And as you know, Mark, it's one of those things that Bruce said it, I'm saying it again. If you stream the album, where do we find the money to buy flights or buy a van, or hire a van? How do we work? So we want to work. We just need the chance to do that, you know, to come out and play live.
Yeah, very, very well said. It's one of those things, and I had just done an interview yesterday, and I mentioned, you know, I had bought this physical CD of this band. It wasn't given to me. It's something I wanted to help support because, you know, I'm old school. It's like, I understand exactly what you just said. Yeah. It's gotten so tough that for any level of band, that if fans aren't like actually buying the merchandise or buying the record or buying the T-shirt or buying whatever, they're not made of money. The bands aren't made of money to get out there. And it's a real misnomer that I think some people think, well, if I see a band on stage, that somehow they're doing pretty good, so that it's okay if I don't buy this. It's like, no, they need it more now than ever.
Yeah, I know musicians that have worked with very, very well-known bands, which I won't mention, but I know them personally. I've played with them that had to leave the bands to go back to work, teaching music or computer work, because they can't afford to pay the rent, because when they're out on tour, they're not getting paid. You know, they only get a minimum fee. So I know guitarists and singers and musicians that have come back and go back to work to try and keep, you know, the rent paid. So that's how tight it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's been some local bands and not local bands, but bands that have come to Seattle that I know. And if I'm at the merch table and if I'm in a position that I'm not, maybe I have a few extra bucks on me, I won't spend $30 on a t-shirt. I'll give them 40 to kind of help them out because I know the road is tough. And so all the fans out there, if you want to see Lionheart, get a chance to get together and perform the music live for you, you got to buy the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing I'd like better than to play live and tour with Lionheart. It's a dream, and we love it,
Yeah, and I guess and the other piece too that we can talk about when it comes to not only buying the music, but if the show's coming to your town, you got to go. You got to buy the ticket. You got to get out there.
Yeah, in the old days, as you said, old school, I used to love buying the Steely Dan albums years ago in the 70s. See how many bands are on the album. There'll be 50 musicians. I used to love reading about it. Love reading about the Eagles, how many musicians they had in it. Not so much the heavy rock bands because they had a lineup and that's what they used. But when you see these other bands that use 100 musicians to make one album, you see all the session guys on there and all the players. It's great reading, all the photographs. And with Lionheart, with Tristan, he puts a 24-page booklet with everything in it, the whole history of Lionheart from 1980. You can read it for days, for hours. It's fantastic.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I love having the album on, and there I am looking at, in the old days, looking at the album cover, looking at the liner notes, looking at the lyrics, looking at the special thanks, who's thanked for what, and that's really kind of become a lost art. And then, now I think about it, when you're talking about playing Sweden rock with Lionheart, I think you guys had requested, it might be on your YouTube channel, where you had done Michael Schenker's Anytime.
Yeah. Yep. Love it.
Love that song from the Save Yourself album. And I was like, that's right, Steve Mann was playing with Michael during that time.
Well, yeah, because Steve and Robin wrote that song, you see.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was, and also we were very lucky at Sweden Rock that time because we were the only band that was streamed live. So it was really nice that we kept the hard drive from the whole show. It was lovely.
Oh wow, cool. Will that whole show ever see the light of day somehow on DVD or something?
No idea. I think Steve may have it, and if it needs to be done, it would have to be sort of remixed and mastered, and the sound quality. I'm not sure. It's down to Steve in the studio, and he's the brains.
Okay, all right. And I just want to let anybody know that's watching right now. Again, if you have a question for Dennis, just come into the YouTube channel or onto the Twitch channel, and you can ask your question via the chat, and I'll throw it into the conversation. I'm wondering if we can kind of switch some gears a little bit and ask if I can ask you some questions about Iron Maiden.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I believe in the interviews I've seen with yourself, where you've talked about back when you were in the band and you're working on Phantom of the Opera, that you had come up with some vocal harmonies that were kind of nixed by whomever decided not to go that route. Is that something you would ever consider trying to perform the way you had those vocal harmonies in your head live, like with any lineup of any band that you were part
of course. Basically, the truth for that story was that I used to be in the studio on my own quite a lot with the engineer, only because some of the tracks I used to put down the extra harmony guitars or the backing vocals or certain things. But we had some free time and we were messing about. And when I did the vocals for the chorus of the Phantom of the Opera, and I said to the engineer, I said, wouldn't it be great, to hear that like a really big anthem, like big chorus. And he said, well, look, we got free time and no one's here. Let's just do it and see. And so I went back in the studio. You damaged my mind and muscle, because we put all these vocals down and it started building up and we got carried away. And I started layering on the different harmonies, get to the high one, falsetto. And then we were sitting in the studio listening to it back, and he was mixing all these vocals. We even took the track out once and just had the vocals there. And it was like Bohemian Rhapsody. And so we're listening to it back and we're laughing. What we didn't realise that Rod Smallwood had crept in the studio behind us, and it was all dark. And he went absolutely potty. And he said, what are you doing? I went, no, Rod, he's having a heart attack. I said, Rod, we're just messing about. They're not going to stay. The vocals are not, take them vocals. We don't want them vocals. I said, no, So we just kept the 2-part with me and Paul. And I said, it's all right. We're just joking around. We just wanted to see what it sounded like. But it did give me an idea to record that one day with proper, big anthem vocals. And I spoke earlier about Pertru, cello player that plays with me with Maiden United. And he works with Apocalyptica with 3 cellos and massive sound. And that give me an idea where the breakdown in Phantom, where you don't have the guitars, you just have cellos, vroom, 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 and it's completely like a big production. I'd love to do something like that one day. It's not yet, but I'd love to do it. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks for sharing that story. And yeah, I would love to hear these ideas. And it's interesting too that you mentioned you guys are just messing around in the studio to kind of see. Let's kind of basically fuck around and see what this sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't like this is what we're going to do, and the band better like it. It was like, no, we've got some time. Fuck around with this.
Oh no, Maiden were already set with that album. It was raw, punky. It was just us. Excitement. It was recorded very quickly. There was no messing about with the production. It was just straight out, the analog tape, and bang, it was being done. We never had a chance to breathe. It had to be done quickly because the band was under a lot of pressure for time to do certain things. Metal from Others tour, coming up with the Judas Priest tour, then the Kiss tour. It was constant, so you had to be quick. So no, that was just messing about. We do it if you get some free time in the studio. There's no harm in trying, different things out. Sometimes you can use it on other songs, so it's no harm.
Okay, yeah. And so when you joined Maiden, and because it's been different things that I've seen either online or things that I've read, were you adding a lot more of the guitar harmonies to their sound, or was it kind of already there when you joined?
No. When I first met them, see, Steve and Dave used to come to the Bridge House in Canning Town when I first mentioned about watching the Terry Newman play, and we were resident at the Bridge House with my band RDB, Remersdown Boulevard, and Steve and Dave used to come down on Sunday night and watch us play. So they knew who I was. I didn't know who they were until I met them. I got the call to go and meet up with them at the Ship at Wardour Street. I went down there and we had a chat, and I realised they were the 2 guys that used to come and watch us at the Bridge House. We all got on really well. They gave me the Soundhouse tapes, the cassette. I went home and listened to it. My first impression was, wow, it's punky, it's raw, it's one. It was all thrash, all like it was manic. And so when I went to the studio to have the first rehearsal, I'd learned a couple of the songs, like I think Rothschild or Prowler or whatever it was, and the easy ones. And I just mentioned to Steve and Dave, they already seen Remersdown Boulevard, RDB, so they knew about the twin harmony guitars. And I mentioned that. I said, look, I've always played with 2 guitars rather than lead and rhythm. I prefer to, playing melodies, and it can make the band sound bigger production. And they went, no, I had a free run to do that. And so, of course, when I started playing the cassette at home, the first thing I did, wasn't so much the chord work. It was to all the riffs with Rothschild, all the riffs with Phantom, Running Free, all the songs. There was a harmony guitar going down with it. So me and Dave got together in the studio after that, and I said, you're happy with that? And he went, yeah, sounds great. And so that's where the harmony guitar style come from, because many years before Iron Maiden, I was playing Wishbone Ash stuff. So they're all harmony guitars. Billy Brown, harmony guitars. It was a style of playing I took into the band, and thankfully they still use it now, which is, I suppose, nice for me to know that they kept the style, even with 3 guitarists. They kept the style with the harmonies being played on the new records. So I'm really pleased about that. That it was. I actually took that into the band.
Wow, that's amazing, because as you just said, that's become a signature piece of their sound all these years.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow. So that brings up, so with having played a lot of twin harmonies in your previous bands, and you're bringing that to Maiden in the early days when you joined, is that just something like you talked about as a guitarist? You're always looking for what fits the song, and do you always have melodies in your head, so harmonizing it comes easy to you, or is it something you had to kind of work at?
Some of the harmonies come easier. It's easier with vocals for me rather than on the guitar. You know, Steve Mann would probably be able to play the harmony straight off because he reads music. I don't read music, but it's one of those things that I'd have to work out. There's certain harmonies that don't really gel, and you got to be careful. But yeah, with the Maiden songs, it was quite easy because most of it was chord work. It was only the little riffs, you know, as I say, in certain songs that, like Running Free was the solos, but with Phantom and other stuff, it was all just little harmony riffs that came in every now and again. So it was quite easy, you know. And I was able to put overdubs on, like little breakdowns of Iron Maiden on. I was able to overdub the harmony to that twin guitars that you probably wouldn't play live, but they were all there. It was quite easy.
Okay. And for the kind of the musician in me, and I think even for some people that are watching this, they don't realize what a strong singer you are. You're known as a guitarist probably first, and maybe singer second. So when you're, like you said, you're 16, you're going checking out some of the local guitar players, you can get in the pub. Were you working on guitar and singing at the same time, or what? Just how did that develop with your voice?
Yeah, well, when we first started in cover bands, because I was always a Beatles, Rolling Stones fan in the early 60s. You know, when I was like 10, 11, 12, watching the films from the Beatles, I was always a rhythm guitar and singing person. That's how we learned to play. I never actually did lead vocals until I started with a covers band to play in pubs, and then because you have to do all, most of the singing between you and the other guitarist or whatever. And then we did try it a couple of times with Lionheart, with me and Rocky doing the lead vocal. I may sing well, but I'm not a lead vocalist. I don't have the range or the quality in the voice, which is funny enough lately, as I've been singing more and more lead vocals, especially with Maiden United. And when I'm in Europe doing the Maiden conventions, I work with Maiden tribute band and I do a lot of vocals there. I found my voice is getting stronger. The vibrato is more controlled. So I'm quite happy with that. But even with Mantis, I tried doing lead vocal on a few songs, but I was never that good enough to get that quality of your David Coverdale's or your Lee Smalls. Lee's got a fantastic lead vocal. So I'll always be a backing vocalist. So I prefer that. It's gentle.
Okay. Well, I think the other thing though is that because you have sung lead over the years, at times, that when you're doing the backing vocals, and if it's you and somebody else in the band, and you've got someone like Lee doing the lead, boy, those vocals come across super strong. It's just like it's like having 3 lead vocalists or 4 lead vocalists in the band.
Yeah, exactly. That's why when Lionheart got together, we had a problem finding a vocalist that was strong enough to front the 3 of our vocals. And we went through many vocalists trying auditions. But now we've all matured, it's easier, especially with the recording, because, Steve's such a great recording engineer and producer. But yeah, I think our voices have matured, and although we might not still have the high ranges as you get older, we're still able to put them choruses across. And it does go to the fact that live work, we always say to the sound engineer, whoever it is, look, you've not just got 1 vocalist and 3 backing singers. We want them vocals up the same level as the lead vocal. So when we come in, it hits you like a train, So that's the idea of it, to feature the backing vocals. It's always been the same with me. With Lionheart, Mantis for 15 years, 3-part harmonies, harmony guitars. Back with Lionheart, vocal harmonies, harmony guitars. It's always been our style our trait of playing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love that type of thing. I'm thinking about when you're saying to any sound engineer when you're going to perform live, they say, hey, keep those levels up on the mics. That it reminds me of Journey. So when Jonathan Cain and Ross Valerie back in the day, and you had all these vocals like boom, when that chorus comes in, it's like it's actually them singing. It's not a backing tape like we have dealing with these days. It's like no, they actually have talent. They're actually singing.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree totally.
Awesome. I think one other thing, like if we kind of go back to some of the Maiden stuff, was that there's this, at least for me, there's this gray area where you joined the band, you recorded, I believe, the self-titled album in like 17 days or something like that. But in the live set, there was already like Wrathchild and maybe Drifter and some other songs that weren't recorded yet. And then eventually you guys parted ways and they recorded the Killers album. Were you working on some of that material in terms of like adding the harmony guitars to some of those songs that ended up on that album?
All of it, the whole album, because when we had to headline for an hour and a half, 1.5 hours, when we headlined, we had to play both albums. So basically, Killers, the song Killers wasn't included. We brought that in later, but both albums, all them songs were played live. So it was only a matter of Steve picking the songs he wanted for the first album, which he did, and then we were left with Killers, which was the same songs that we played live on the full hour and a half. When we supported Judas Priest and Kiss, you only had 45 minutes, so you just played the first album. We included Rothschild instead of Strange World. But going back to Killers, I did all the pre-production on it. It was already all recorded down. Working on Killers, the song with the diddle and all the other bits were all down, but I never got to actually record the album. So it was a bit of a shame because I did all the work for it, but never recorded it.
Oh, wow. Thanks for giving me that insight, because that's something I always kind of wondered about. It's like, it seems like since Daniels is in the band and they were playing these songs, that it was probably ready to go in the studio, and then things happened the way they did.
Yeah, it was a shame. I really was looking forward to recording that album, and also it would have been another gold disc.
Okay, and I see we have a question that came in, Dennis, and it says, if Maiden announced a final tour with a final concert, if they invited past members like yourself, Paul, and Blaze to make an appearance, would you be interested for the fans? Would you do it?
Of course. I've already asked. It's one of those things that's on your bucket list, and you got to understand that I talk to Steve quite a lot about West Ham and about football, about anything. Not as always music. I do a lot of charity work, so I meet up with Steve quite a lot, and he signs certain stuff that I'm going to auction at charities. We have a West Ham guitar. If he signs it, it doubles in price, and I raise more money for charity. So it goes without saying. And yes, there's been many times where I've said to him, Steve, I've nearly completed my bucket list, and before I go to that final gig in the sky, there is one more on my bucket list that I need to tick off. And he just laughs. He knows what I'm saying. I've dropped the hint many times, and Steve knows what I'm saying. He's never really given me an answer. He just laughs, puts a thumb up like that, So that's it. That's how we leave it. But yes, definitely.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. Maybe one time he won't laugh and he'll say, you know what about this day?
That's if Rod lets me,
Well, and since you mentioned Rod, I saw another interview that you did many years ago where I believe Lionheart was in LA recording an album, and you ran into Rod at, I believe, the Rainbow.
Yes.
And can you kind of elaborate on what happened during that interaction with Rod?
Oh no, it was quite nice because when me and Rod never saw eye to eye while I was in Maiden, he didn't like the music I listened to. I understand that. It was nothing to do with my input of work. It was just a personality thing. He didn't like the idea of me listening to the Eagles. There were certain things he didn't like. Me, when I wanted to travel separate from the band, he always thought I was trying to ignore the band, trying to distance myself. but it wasn't. It was just the fact that if I fancied jumping in a truck with one of the truck drivers to take me to the next venue, it's exciting. If I wanted to travel with the road crew because they're funny, I would travel with the road crew. We used to get on like house on fire. It was fantastic. Rob didn't like that idea. He wanted me to stay with the band all the time. Tried to explain to him that staying with someone 24 hours a day can cause a bit of friction. You know, people get tired. You get annoyed with people with certain things. You might be tired or, you know, whatever. And when I saw him in '84 in the Rainbow, he bought me a beer and he said, you know, no hard feelings. And he said, you know, I think, you know, you made a lot of sense by trying to keep people together, wrap them in cotton wool and in a straitjacket and tie them up. If you put 5 guys in a car or in a room for 8 hours and they get tired, someone's going to have an argument. And I think that's what he was trying to say was, I understand now what you're saying. You know, maybe I was too strict, too overpowering. But we had a beer and it was great to see him. I've seen him many times at the shows. I always go to the shows with Maiden, Boston, Vegas, Milan, O2. I always go, you know, and I always bump into him and say hello and things. So it was just early stages of Maiden gelling as a band, a new lineup. Only been together 12 months. We're going into the second year, 79 and 80, and I think he just panicked a little bit and, you know, didn't understand my ways, you know.
Okay, well, that's good that things kind of like you know, worked out well in that interaction in '84.
Yeah.
And it makes for myself personally, when I'd heard and watched that interview, it made sense to me because, like, I don't think anybody wants to be around other people, no matter how close you are with them, especially in a band, because you don't get a lot of sleep. You're on the road, you're playing shows. It's like, it's nothing against you guys personally, but I'm going to be over here for a little bit of time.
Yeah, just a little bit of space, you know, a little bit of different.
Yeah, I mean, even with people's spouses and your boyfriend or your girlfriend, I don't know if you want to be around them 24/7 all the time. It's like, it works better when you can breathe a bit.
Yeah.
So, and that's interesting that you mentioned that, like, you see Maiden on many shows, many cities. Because I saw somebody had put like a comment on a YouTube fan video about that they ran into you outside of one of the arenas, and he said Dennis is like the nicest guy. He's like the nicest person. They couldn't believe they saw you outside one of the Maiden shows.
Yeah, well, the good thing about it, the lucky thing for me is that I'm still remembered by the fans. I'm still part of the family, and they've not turned their back on me, which is lovely because it makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel still wanted. And it went, as I said, I've just come back from 6.5 weeks in Brazil doing the Maiden show that I do in Europe with the Maiden convention. And we did the whole first album and a couple of killers. And the Maiden fans came, they love it. And they always give me a warm welcome and always take time to have photographs and selfies and, you know, everything. So it's, yeah, it is really nice to be still included in the family.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when was that? So I first heard Maiden in, like, I want to say 81, 82. So like those first 2 albums for me are like gold. I mean, they're like, that's that foundational piece, and I followed them since, as many other fans obviously have. But I think the other piece too is that Steve's talked about that it wasn't anything to do with you personally when things split. It was just kind of like you already described about Rod didn't like you listen to certain types of music and other kinds of things. It would have been different if it was like, we hate this guy and we want him out and he was messing up our sound. It's like nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
So
no,
I
as I say, it's so nice when I look on social media sites and my site and things like that, and you still get, the first 2 albums are my favorite 2 albums. And when I see photos of the original lineup with me included in the photo and the comments in Facebook, like, this is the best lineup, it makes me feel so good because you're still there, part of that legacy, part of that family, and then so long it may continue, being proud of the first album,
Yeah, I mean, I was got that remaster with it's got that picture of you, in it. So I mean, there you are. And something that I bought, as we were talking about earlier. Support the musicians, support the bands.
I don't think they need the money. He said it to me.
Oh man. And as you mentioned, you've been playing with Maiden conventions and a lot of tribute bands around the world. I know you were down in Brazil for a stretch of time doing some stuff that's online. And so when you're going to be going down and playing a string of shows, let's say in Brazil, doing with a Maiden tribute band, do you tell them ahead of time, like, here's the set list of what you want to play through, or they kind of work it out between them, or how's that process work?
No, there's the set I've done is I've done it for the last 15 years. Bulgaria, Australia, South Africa, it's always the same set. And especially starting in Europe, in Italy, when I first went to Italy, I'm going back 16 years ago with the Clairvoyants. It's always been that set. Over the last few years, we've added a couple of songs because people wanted to hear Strange World played live, which we didn't used to do live. And I love that song. I've always have loved that song. So we've included Strange World in the set. And we've also brought back Charlotte the Harlot that I never used to do. But basically that set is carved in stone. I don't alternate it. I don't change it. And every band I play with knows that set. They already know it. And they rehearse it on their own before I arrive. So they all know that set that I work to.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And just for me being the fan that I am, have you ever done one of these gigs with a tribute band where you're like, and I don't know how you would do this politely, but most of them that I've seen, they have 2 guitars. Sometimes they have 3 guitars trying to replicate, modern Maiden. And then if you're going to join the band, have you ever had it where it's just you and one other guitar player and the other guys kind of step off the stage?
No, I had, funny enough, it was just before COVID. One of the guitarists, there was 2 guitarists in the band. We were in Rome, and it was in the end of February 2020, before lockdown. And one of the guitarists had COVID because it started in that ski resort in Italy, and he collapsed in the dressing room. He couldn't breathe, and he was coughing and everything, headaches. So we went on just 2 guitars. Whoever it is on the other side of the stage, they always know that they've got to do Dave Murray's parts. I can look after myself. They need to do Dave Murray's parts. As long as they do Dave's, we're covered. If there's 2 guitarists on stage and he's doing all my parts, he has to play rhythm while I play my parts. But when they're together, they might be on stage for half an hour before I go on stage, and they'll do 2 Minutes to Midnight, Wasted Years. They can do any song they want, any songs they want. And then when I come on, we do that first album plus a couple from Killers. We do Killers and we do Rothschild and whatever, I can't remember. But I always make sure that there's a Dave Murray on the other side of the stage to cover all Dave's parts. Okay,
that makes sense that if someone's was in your role, quote unquote, that hey, you're going to be playing rhythm when I'm on stage because I'm going to do those parts that I'm supposed to do. Because sometimes I've seen bands, not so much with tribute bands, but like if a guest comes on to, like, say, jam with Metallica, like a former member, then you don't really hear that member's stuff. It's kind of like, well, can you maybe step back, so and so that's on the stage right now, because I want to hear the guest. I don't want to hear you. Nothing personal. But,
as I say, there's certain stuff that the vocalist will do on a whole song, the whole set. He'll sing anything that Paul sang or Bruce. But then when I come on, then I'll join in with the vocals. I'll sing Prowler. We sing Phantom together. We sing Remember Tomorrow together. We swap. So it's alternating vocals, which works quite well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I see somebody's asking me, is there a song from Maiden's catalog that you would like to perform that you weren't a part of?
I do love playing Wasted Years, but that's with Maiden United. So that's acoustic. It's done a completely different, similar arrangement, but just a different angle to the song. No, I don't think so. As I say, I'd like to re-record Phantom, but anything that they've done since me not playing with them, I've never really wanted to record another song by them. No, not really. As I say, only the stuff we do in Maiden United, Die With Your Boots On, you know, the Evil That Men Do. We play them songs with Maiden United because they alternate the sets, different sets for different tours, different vocalists, different band, different members. That's why it's United. But no, with the stuff I do, I stick to what I know and what I'm used to playing, you know.
Okay. And you just mentioned a few minutes ago that Strange World's back in the set and Charlotte the Harlot's back in the set. And do you ever take like an extended solo with Strange World?
Yeah.
Guitar solo?
Unfortunately, yes. I get a bit carried away, and that started in Italy last year. And I thought, you know, this break I've got is too good to waste. And I just said to the band, look, I may carry on a little bit longer. I may get carried away, but I'll always give them a signal as I'm coming to the end of the solo so they can come back in with the verse. And the same thing as Brazil. We did the same thing as Brazil. We extended the solo, yeah.
It makes sense to me because, I mean, it's like it almost like it needs it.
Yeah, exactly. Bit like I've still got the blues thing sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a question for Dennis, please get it in there as we're going to be wrapping this up. He's been really generous with his time. So Dennis, when you look back over your career of all the bands, all the gigs, recordings, you know, people you've met, things you've done, anything off the top of your head stand out for one reason or the other?
I've always said the Reading Festival 1980 for Maiden. That was one huge audience. I've also got some fantastic memories of the early 70s with Remersdown Boulevard because we were a pub band, marquee club band, and we signed a management deal with Quarry Management that managed Status Quo, and they put us out on tour with Status Quo back in about 76. And then we went from playing to 300 people to 60,000, 70,000 people in these stadiums in Europe with Status Quo. And that we grew up very quickly, coming from a pub to that. That's amazing memories of that, being with Quo on stage, just looking around at this huge arena, football stadium, whatever. Same thing with Kiss. Big memories with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley taking me out me and Dave Lights taking me out for dinner, October the 9th, 1980 in Stockholm. That was my birthday, 9th of October. They took us out for dinner. There's lots of great memories. Lionheart going to LA for the first time in 84 to record in the famous Sound City Studios. I've been very, very lucky, Mark, to have lived a life like this and still playing at 70. I'm 72 this year. Still grateful for the fans that still welcome you. Great memories.
Well, it's amazing. I love hearing the experiences and things that you've done. And I know you've mentioned when Maiden opened for Kiss, and you just mentioned that Paul and Gene helped celebrate your birthday in Stockholm. What were your impressions of them? They were the first band I ever saw live back in 1979. So I'm just curious as a fan, what were your impressions back then of those guys?
They just, you know, we got backstage, and again, Rod said don't get too close to them and all that, but I talk to everyone. Support bands, I have so much respect for support bands because we've been support bands, we still are. I have so much respect for the headlining band, Judas Priest, Glenn Tipton. We were together all the time. Status Quo, Rick Parfitt, and we were together all the time. When I got to meet Kiss, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley backstage, and they were the first. I would be standing there with a beer. We'd been finished, and I'm watching them go on stage. And they'll walk towards the stage, and they'll be the first one to come over, put their arm around you. You know, they're up here. with their platform boots, and I'm looking up, and they've got their arm around you, and to people taking pictures, and it was fantastic. And just all them experiences of meeting these people, always, Kiss were fantastic. I used to love watching the sound checks because Gene would be practicing that swinging across from the speakers, and sometimes they'd just leave him hanging up there and just ignore him for a little while. He used to be dangling like, "Hey guys, get me down!" It was funny. But all their memories still with me. Yeah, fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What those guys are like, and that was back in the day when they were still trying to keep their their anonymity about what they look like without the makeup on,
Of course.
all that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember that for me growing up, that was the whole thing. Like, what do they actually look like? And if they catch a picture of them, they're like this with a hand in front of their face. And that kind of stuff.
When they took me for dinner, me and Dave, they made sure that there was no cameras there, no phones them days, but they made sure that no one had a camera in the restaurant. The security took care of that.
Yeah, those were the days. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for taking the time about Lionheart and your career. This has been such an honor for me. And again, everybody, the new Lionheart album comes out on the 23rd of February in Meadowville. So as we were talking earlier, make sure you buy it. Streaming, it's nice, but if you can buy it, that helps get the band out on the road. So
that would be fantastic. And Mark, thank you to you and for all the fans and all our friends all over the world. It's great doing this. Without your help, the bands need people like you to help us move on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The pleasure is all mine. Have a good night over there and take care.
Thank you, and you and everyone else. God
Thank
bless.
you.